Good morning, Food Bank of Iowa partners. Thank you for joining us virtually for the annual Food Bank of Iowa Meeting the Need Conference. Today, we celebrate the extraordinary accomplishments of this unstoppable Food Bank of Iowa network as we plan and prepare for what lies ahead. Now, you know that collaboration is at the heart of everything we do. How did collaboration pay off in 2021? Let me tell you. 17 million pounds of food was distributed to 1 million neighbors, which allowed 14,250,000 meals to be served in 442,000 households. Without you, this would not have happened. Neighbors would not have eaten. Children would have been hungry. It takes each of us showing up every day to create this level of impact across 55 Iowa counties. This network is extraordinary. 40 Food Bank of Iowa employees, scores of food donors, 677 partner organizations at the end of 2021, and their legions of volunteers, 8,450 volunteers here at our site in Des Moines and in Ottumwa, and 20,000 financial donors. Together, this Food Bank of Iowa network makes a huge difference in the lives of many, because when you hand people food, we all provide hope. As you know, we're part of a much bigger network, Feeding America. In April, at the annual convening of food banks, Feeding America awarded the much coveted Network Celebration Award to 6 Feeding America food banks, of which Food Bank of Iowa was one, recognizing our excellence in inclusion, collaboration, and service. There we go. This is your award. Congratulations. It's a privilege for us, Food Bank of Iowa employees, to work by your side to alleviate hunger in Iowa. You inspire us, you lift us up, you amaze us every day. Thank you for your service and dedication. As we look ahead, it seems as if our jobs are getting a little harder again. April of 2022 feels a lot like April of 2020. Orders are big and trucks are full. Why are we here again? Stimulus checks have been spent, SNAP benefits back to normal, maximum unemployment benefits are gone, child tax credit was spent last fall. All of this is happening as we experience inflation not seen since the 1980s. The Consumer Price Index indicates that food prices have risen 9%. Flour, butter, meat, poultry, and fish are up 14%, milk 13%, eggs 11%. Rice and pasta, which fills the belly and takes up space, 9%. Fruits and vegetables are up 8.5%. Even bread has jumped 7%. I've been out visiting you, meeting with food pantry directors. You're telling me that you're seeing an escalation of need. You're seeing a return to pantries by folks who had gotten by for the last couple of years, but once again need help with food. You're seeing many new faces, many of whom have jobs but just can't make ends meet. Food Bank of Iowa has been here for 40 years, helping you help your neighbors. Over the past few years, we've worked hard to be well positioned to serve hungry Iowans today, tomorrow, and well into the future. As long as people cannot afford basic needs, we will walk beside you to provide food for your neighbors in need. Let's turn toward the future. We have a plethora of fantastic information to share today, and I'm excited to give you a preview. In a few minutes, I will have the honor and privilege to sit down virtually with the charming and brilliant Claire Babineaux-Fontenot, CEO of Feeding America. It's a privilege to have Claire join the conference again this year, and it's always fun to see where these conversations go. This morning, you'll get a behind-the-scenes look at what happens at the Food Bank of Iowa once you place an order and as it makes its way toward you. Right before lunch, you'll hear about Service Insights, a Feeding America initiative that will help us glean deeper understandings about the people we serve and their needs. After the lunch break, you'll hear more about retail food rescue and reporting. With a 35% reduction in USDA food coming into our distribution center, food rescue has become critical to filling the meal gap. And in the afternoon, you'll learn about our efforts to provide you with more information regarding nutritional value of items in the Food Bank of Iowa inventory. And I tell you, I ask you, please stay with us for the end of day excitement as we recognize milestone partner anniversaries and draw for a $100 credit for one lucky recipient in each of the 5 regions. Must be present to win. So without further delay, let's launch our first session of the day. I'm thrilled to share with you a conversation with Feeding America CEO Claire Babineaux-Fontenot. Claire was named CEO of our member network in 2018, and we all think that was pretty good timing. She came to us as an experienced leader, having served in several key roles, including Executive Vice President and Global Treasurer at Walmart. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Louisiana. You might hear a little bit of that in her voice. Her law degree from Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, and a Master of Laws in Taxation from Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law. In 2020, amidst COVID, Time magazine named this woman one of the world's most influential people, and we're with her today. Please welcome to our virtual stage my friend, my hero, my colleague, Claire Babineaux-Fontenot.
Wow. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for having me back. Of course, like you, I wish we could be together in person. I wish I had an opportunity to look you in the eyes directly and thank you for your extraordinary leadership under unique times. I wish I could also thank all of those extraordinary partners that you have who are participating virtually today. I wish I were able to be in person to shake your hands and to look you, each of you, in the eye and thank you as well. I'm humbled by the opportunity to be in this role, and the reason that it's so humbling and the reason that I know it to be such a privilege is because of the company that I get to keep. That means you, Michelle, and all of you out there. So thanks for having me.
Claire, we were just going to chat a little bit today, a little bit about the past, but also what we see in the future. Golly, COVID was a heck of a ride for all of us. And standing with us the entire time was Feeding America. I don't know that our agency partners realize the extraordinary support that we received from Feeding America over the course of COVID. You came to us immediately in those early days and said Feeding America would stand behind us, would lift us up, would walk beside us, that any fundraising that you would do nationally would come through to the Feeding America food banks. You helped us with big grants. You helped us with USDA food and funding. And really together we came through. We weathered an incredible storm. Tell us what that was like on your side. What were you seeing and sensing as we worked through COVID?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question. And I love coming back to this forum because it allows for you and me to have a dialogue. So I'm going to have some questions for you too. And I'm happy to explore various subjects with you today. I think maybe a good place for me to start is to make certain that everyone who's participating has a sense of what it means to be the Feeding America network to begin with. Um, the network includes about 200 food bank members, including the Food Bank of Iowa and its extraordinary team of leaders. When we talk about networks and when we talk about Feeding America, we also mean all of you who are participating virtually. 60,000 agency partners and meal programs across the country. We mean 2 million volunteers across the country and in Puerto Rico. A vast network. Together, we touch tens of millions of people every year. So I hope that if you forget every other thing that I say today, that you remember that when you see that Feeding America logo, or if you hear the words Feeding America, that we're talking about you. So when you asked the question about how I experienced the pandemic, I'll tell you that it started before the pandemic with the recognition of some things. Like, I knew before the pandemic started that I was breathing rarefied air to be a part of this network. I'd already had an opportunity to visit members, including you, before the pandemic started. I was inside of communities seeing the extraordinary work that was being done by agency partners like some of the ones who are participating today. I also knew before the pandemic that we do not need to look to distant shores to find hunger. That hunger's right here. There have been children who are struggling under the weight of hunger for a very long time in this country. There are seniors who've been struggling under the weight of hunger for a very long time. There are workers who are not able to fulfill their potential at work because of the struggle with hunger for such a long time. So going into the pandemic, about 38 million people were food insecure in 2018 when I joined. That's nearly 40 million people in this country. So I thought, one of the biggest issues we have is that the American public just must not know that there's a reason why little kids who are picky eaters in this country, their moms and dads tell them, you better eat that food, eat your broccoli, because you know there are hungry children in Africa. Or you better eat your broccoli or carrots because there are hungry kids in China. There's a reason that they look to distant shores because they don't realize that hunger's right here. So I thought, if the American public understood what's happening with hunger in America, the public would rise up and would choose to be a part of solutions. So I had all of that in my mind and my heart going into the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit. And then we had this opportunity, and I had a unique opportunity, Michelle, to be a spokesperson for all of you. The cameras started coming, and we started going to cameras as well, and we started shining a bright light on the work that all of you were doing. And as I expected, the American public, when it understood better what was happening, decided to stand beside us and do this hard work along with us. So throughout the course of the pandemic, I'll tell you probably the most overwhelming feeling that I had was gratitude. I was so deeply grateful that I was in a role that allowed me an opportunity to be associated with people who wake up every morning committed to being great neighbors. I was excited that I was in a role that even when there were all kinds of things in the media that reminded us of the ways that we're different and the things that might divide us, that I was in a role that gave me a chance every day in communities across the country to see people who are crossing all kinds of divides, to work on the things that bind us together. We are an extraordinary country, America. with extraordinary people within it. The most generous country, probably in the history of civilization. This is a country that knows what it means to be a great neighbor, and I get to see it all the time. So I considered my responsibility to help the American public to understand what was happening, to help the American public to understand who you guys are and what you do every day, to bring those cameras so they could see those lines, they could understand the struggle. Michelle, you mentioned that early on in the pandemic at the national level, before people really understood what was happening, you guys already were starting to see those lines form. That one of the things we did, in fact, the very first week in March of 2020, we started a COVID-19 fund. And every single penny that went into that fund, which wound up being hundreds of millions of dollars, every single penny went back into communities, into our members, and into our members' networks, like the people who are participating here on this call. And that gives me great satisfaction that we were able to use our bully pulpit, our platforms, to attract much needed food and funds and friends to this work. And every time I had a chance, if anybody let me, if I were on TV doing an interview, if they gave me a shot, I always had in the background something that indicated that what makes Feeding America National Office special is that it's a part of this extraordinary network, which includes food banks like yours, Michelle, and partners like all the people who are participating here. So it gave me a chance to do that. And I direct people. I always tell them, so go to feedingamerica.org, and there's a food bank locator there, and type in the zip code of the community that means the most to you. And there will be a member of this network that's serving that community. And there will be partners who are partnering with that food bank to make certain that you get what you need when you need it the most. So overwhelmingly, I felt pride. I never felt burdened, but I certainly felt responsible throughout the pandemic. And I continue to feel privileged, proud, and responsible to be in this role at a moment like this one. Now, I mentioned that turnabout would be fair play during this convening, that I'd have an opportunity to ask you some questions. And in fact, you've already alluded to the services that you've provided, that Feeding America has provided to you. So I don't even know that we need to go deeper into that. But one of the things that gave me so much comfort and energized me throughout the pandemic was that I've been to at least 100 sites since the pandemic started. And every time I went, I learned something new. I visited members. I went to food distributions, and it was so enriching for me, and I learned so much. Well, I'm not alone in that approach. And one of the things that inspires me about your leadership is that you do that too. Would you mind talking about, now these are people who you go to visit, so they probably already know, but I'd love to hear from you. Why do you do that? Why do you think it's important to go out, to you personally, to go to agency partners? What's that like? Is there anything you learned? Are you going to keep doing it? Why don't you talk to us about that, Michelle?
It's a tremendous privilege to be able to go out and visit our pantry partners. I know a lot of food bank executives can't make time to do that. Their hands are very, very full. We have a great team of people here, a great team of leadership. So it does enable me to leave the building and make visits like that. This year, where we are 40% through our visits, we have 3 of our regions yet to complete. What I've learned thus far has just been amazing. Our agency partners are, many of them, grateful for grants that we were able to extend to them through the state of Iowa CARES Act funding. Many partners took advantage of that, and our regional partnership coordinators, again, which is unusual that we have that role at Food Bank of Iowa. They helped their partners procure grant money. The heart and the soul of what we do exists at the community level. We find food, we keep it safe. Our volunteers repackage it, check it. But it's our agency partners that hand the food to their neighbors. It's the people that work in those school pantries, church pantries, community pantries, the feeding sites. They know who in the community struggles. They're delivering to seniors. They're opening a school pantry on the weekend to help a family. They're providing their neighbors with assistance in a very dignified way. And what I learned this year on these visits is that the community stands behind them. Each one of these small town communities across 55 Iowa counties, 30,000 square miles of Iowa, the people in Iowa show up. And they are supporting the efforts in their communities to take care of their neighbors. And of course, they had struggles. I learned that a lot, lost their volunteers during COVID and have gone to a pre-pack or a box distribution method. Still serving people every day, making sure that there's food on the table. And I also heard from folks that their need has risen. April saw a drastic uptick in numbers. We're seeing the same thing in May as we're pulling orders and loading the trucks. And they're asking us, we need more cereal, we need more bread, we need more milk, we need more eggs, we need canned soups. We want juice other than grapefruit juice. So these are all things that we're working on procuring. And I always ask them what can we do? What can we do to remove barriers to success? And they know, all of them know that they have a regional partnership coordinator whose job is just that, to be in position to remove barriers to enable their success. And we are working today to put in more food orders to make up for the very recent decrease in USDA food, building our inventory back up again. We are putting an addition back on the back side of our building to add 2,400 pallet positions to enable us to take more food donations and to buy in bigger bulk. So we hear them. It's important for me to hear them, to meet them, to see the space. I bring that back to the food bank. It gives us more perspective at the leadership table, but also it fills me up. Some days are harder than others, but meeting these people, shaking their hand, the hugs, it means a lot. Mm. And I bring that back to the team, and it keeps us going.
Mm. You know, Michelle, I don't know that the team realizes that I'm coming to you from Chicago, Illinois, which is where our offices are. Our national office is in Chicago. And I often reflect on the fact that we've been in Chicago for a while. In fact, I think we from the very beginning, I think we started in Chicago as a national office. And I used to say, when we were at a different address, 35 East Wacker Drive, I often would say, we do a lot of cooking at 35 East Wacker Drive. We don't have to eat any of it, though. And what I meant by that was the fact that it's inside of communities of people, like you were just saying, that people know what their communities need. There's no way that I could fly into Des Moines, and even if I stayed for a weekend and I got a car, which is what I usually do, I fly into one place, and I did that when I came to Iowa the last time, and I fly into one place, like in northern Iowa, I rent a car, and then I drive throughout the state, going to different member food banks and visiting different communities. And that gives me some insights that I didn't have before I flew. But that does not make me a part of any of those communities. That's not a substitute for the judgment of people like you, Michelle, and people like those who are participating, other people who are participating on this call. So, one of the things that we've done at the national level that represents a fundamental shift in the way that we do our work is that we're centering our work in communities, and we're recognizing that what communities need most from us tend not to be ideas. It's not that we have to come up with, we're smart people and we know what you need, Des Moines. We know what all of the counties that you serve at Food Bank of Iowa need. That we know that's not true. So we need to start acting like we know that's not true. And that's what we're trying to do now at the national level. So we're trying to listen actively, understand deeply, and invest in your leadership and not substitute our leadership for yours. And I hope you're feeling that in the way that we approach our work, because it permeates everything that we're trying to do at the national level. We're confident that there are ways that we can be helpful. But we know that paternalism is not the way that we can be helpful, that we can be most helpful. And that paradigm shift happened in large part because you would know this, and I don't know whether the rest of the team participating would know these kinds of details, but when I joined Feeding America in 2018, I joined an extraordinary team of highly, highly capable people, very committed to this mission. So I didn't create that at the national office. It was here when I arrived. But one of the things that was sorely missing was that on our executive team, there was not one of us that had one day of food banking experience. Not one person had one day of food banking experience. So one of the early things that I did was to create a role called the Chief Network Officer. And that role, in order to be in that job, you must have meaningful food banking experience. And when I did that, it unlocked all kinds of potential. So now we went from 0 people with 1 day of food banking experience to 6 people on our executive team who all have meaningful food banking experience, including more than one former food bank CEO who now are at the national level, helping us to better understand the implications of our behaviors, reminding us of not what they don't, for instance, no one at the national office says, well, let me tell you what Michelle would think about this. Because we don't pretend to know what Michelle would think about this. What they do say is, here are some potential barriers to that for a food banker. And we need to talk to Michelle to understand whether those are in fact barriers for her and how we might clear those barriers together. So the whole approach has changed. Our focus is now centered on community, and our focus is also centered on disparity. So with your indulgence, I'd like to talk a little bit about that too, Michelle.
Please do.
So I have often said, you've heard me say it, and I hope you feel the truth of what I'm saying. I care equally about every person facing food insecurity, period. I'm not in a role that I view as being about deciding that one person is more valuable than another person. Um, one person's more worthy than another person. I don't consider this to be a role that's a role in which I judge from on high people and their circumstances. So although it's absolutely true that I care equally about every person facing food insecurity, the reality is not everybody faces food insecurity in the same way. And I talk about our approach to equity at the national level through the lens. I often will ask people, so I'll ask the people who are participating virtually to think about it. What is the wealthiest neighborhood wherever you're from, right? What's the wealthiest neighborhood wherever you're from? And there's usually some place that's considered the wealthiest or the nicest home in your community. And then I ask them, do you have a mobile distribution? Like sometimes it's a gated community. And I'll say, do you have a mobile distribution sitting outside of those gates? And they go, well, no. I go, okay. Is it because you don't care about the people who are inside of that community? Well, no. Why? Well, then why don't you have a mobile distribution right outside those gates? And they say, because they don't need the food. Ah. So we actually are built on a premise that says we go to the people who need us the most. And that's where we focus our inordinate energy. That's fundamental to the work. So that's fundamental to the work that we do at the national level as well. And we know, I grew up in rural America, and Des Moines is a really big city compared to where I'm from, Opelousas, Louisiana. It's a town that used to hail itself as the sweet potato capital of the world. It did. And while we still love sweet potatoes in Opelousas, we don't grow many of them anymore. And this is playing out across America. These small farming communities are getting smaller and smaller. Lots of people in rural America inordinately are impacted by food insecurity. And it's even harder because it's hard to get to them and it's hard for them to get to the food that they need. So many of the people who are participating on this in this conference virtually are the key to people who otherwise live inside of food deserts, the key to them getting access to food. So where you live in the country significantly impacts the likelihood that you're going to get access to the food that you need to feed yourself and your families. So at the national level, we're doubling down on making certain that rural places get access to food. We also know that race impacts the likelihood that you're going to be food insecure in the country as well. So as an example, Native Americans in the country are 3 times more likely to be food insecure. We should care about that because that not only impacts Native Americans, it impacts all of us. African Americans now are 3.2 times more likely to be food insecure. We should care about that because it impacts all of us. One of the unique things about equity work is if you decide to go focus your energy in the places that have the most significant barriers and challenges, you unlock potential that you can then use everywhere. So in the end, what you want is for all communities to thrive. But you recognize in equity work that not all communities are starting from the same place. So you're going to have to do more in some places than you do in other places. And then you're going to learn in all places, and you're going to spread everything that you learn across the whole enterprise. And that's what we do at a national level. And that's what you do there in Iowa as well. And during the pandemic, you've touched places that you were never able to touch before the pandemic. People are counting on us to keep on doing that. And you're doing it against really, really difficult circumstances. I applaud you for all of that. And I really applaud your leadership, Michelle, because every time I talk to you, when I compliment you on something like you mentioned earlier, I want to give context one more time. So there are food banks all across the country. Only 6 food banks out of all of the food banks across the country and in Puerto Rico. Only 6 food banks received the highest honor in food banking this year. and you guys were among them. And when I talked to Michelle about that award and that recognition, the first thing she said was, "Thank you so much. Our network earned that." So the first place that you start every time I talk to you is to talk about the fact that you don't do that by yourself, that you're part of a group of people who together make things that might seem impossible possible across your whole territory. So I want to honor and respect that and thank all of you for what you do. I also didn't mention earlier what we all do together, so let me mention that one. And I wish that we were in a live audience so I could ask, because nobody's ever gotten the answer right. I ask people, okay, so you're talking about tens of millions of meals being provided in your network, right, Michelle? Did you say 17 million? Oh,
Yeah. Well, in 2021, we provided 14 million meals into 440 households.
woo. Now think about it. 14 million meals, real meals to real people. And you're part of a network that since the pandemic started, right, provided not 100 million meals altogether, not a billion meals altogether, not 2 billion meals or 3, not 4 or 5, not 6 or 7, not 8 or 9. We now have provided 11 billion meals. 11 billion meals in the middle of a global health pandemic, in the middle of a food crisis, in the middle of supply chain challenges, in the middle of inflation. You're talking about when the numbers have been this big. I'm 58 years old. I was in 11th grade. I was in 11th grade when inflation was at this rate. 11th grade, 1981. And yet you're making this happen. And one of the things that I hope when you come together that you do, I hope you stop and pause and pat yourselves on the back. You're getting it done. Oh my goodness. And you're real human beings too, right, Michelle? If I
Indeed.
cut you, you would bleed. I mean, you've got your own struggles, you've got your own issues, and you keep on stepping up and you're doing extraordinary things. And we are doing extraordinary things together. So when I think about when I get an invitation like this one, and people usually in an introduction, they're so gracious, like you were, Michelle, and they mention me, they mention that they're excited that I'm participating. And every time I look, I hear that and I just smile and I go, wow, that's so interesting. It's kind of like somebody giving me an ice cream sundae with whipped cream, with a cherry on top, and saying, thank you so much for eating this. I so appreciate it. Thank you for eating it. May I give you more whipped cream? And I'm like, sure, you're welcome. What can I say? I'm a giver, right? I'm a giver. I mean, this is really, truly, truly exceptional. Now you talked some though, Michelle, about the things you guys have accomplished. Would you mind maybe sharing some more? What are the things you are most proud of that you and your network have accomplished together during these really challenging times?
So many things. At a very high level, we learned as a network, the people that are with us today, the Food Bank of Iowa core team of employees, our volunteers, our donors, we learned to be nimble. Food Bank of Iowa employees none of the 40 of us worked from our basement or our spare bedroom. We came to work every day because we knew then as we know today, that because we show up, people get to eat. Our agency partners did the same. And we were so creative, extremely creative, beyond the bounds of anything I ever anticipated. We were creative. Food bank, agency partners, we figured out new ways to get more food to the people in our communities who needed it most.
Mm.
And it took an extraordinary effort. It expanded our network. We had many new partners join us on the journey, people who reached out and said, we want to help, put us to work.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? How can we help you get food out the door? So being nimble, being creative, but what I also learned, collaboration. I've been using that C word for a long time. Through 30 years of my corporate career, I talked about collaboration. I didn't truly know what it meant until I came to this job and started working with these people. The collaboration is incredible. And again, we can do more by working together than apart. We can do more by listening to one another than we can with our doors closed.
Mm.
So going out to visit the pantries, I learned something every single time that I bring back to the leadership team. A best practice here, a great idea there, a new innovation over here. But this team, this network, employees, donors, volunteers, partners, came together at a difficult time. We could have fallen apart, but we didn't. And it solidified us. We came through. I'll tell you, COVID had many silver linings. I shouldn't say this. I'm sure there are people out there that disagree, but COVID came with many, many blessings. Many blessings. And one of those blessings, the support and the love shown to us by Feeding America, but the collaboration and the love and support that came back up to us from our partner agencies.
Mm.
When all of us work together, we can accomplish so much more.
You know, Michelle, I knew that when I asked that question, that you were going to do what you always do, which is you're going to talk about your network and you're going to give the credit to your network who deserve every word that you uttered. They deserve.
Yes.
But I also want to pause a second and reflect on something that, sometimes we're in the only reality we know, right? So we are always in the only reality we know. So we don't know what it's like in other places. And I don't know if your network understands that the fact that you deliver to all of your partners, that's not something that I don't know that there's any food bank other than you who do that you deliver to every one of your partners. You find you show up for your partners. Can you please at least take a few minutes to talk about how you show up for them? Because you're always talking about how they show up for you. So can you talk about how you try your best to show up for them?
Thank you, Claire, for recognizing that. I appreciate it. It is something that sets us apart from other Feeding America food banks, that we do distribute, deliver to the door of our partner agencies. And when I came here in 2016, we had 3 26-foot box trucks with reefer units, all of which were beyond their useful life. And they spent most of their time in the parking lot. And that perplexed me. At the same time, Food Bank of Iowa was not getting enough food out to our more distant rural areas. We were behind in service. So the first thing that we did was to remove delivery fees. We had delivery fees at that time. So if you wanted your food delivered to Spirit Lake or Lake Park or down in Lee County, we would charge you to do that. Otherwise, volunteers are expected to find a pickup or a van, drive to Des Moines, load up their food, drive back another 3 hours to their home, and unload that food using volunteers that mostly were retired from careers and older and probably shouldn't have been lifting those boxes. I'm from Greene County, about an hour or so from Des Moines, and I know how hard it is in rural Iowa to get volunteers, to get some of these things done. And so slowly, gradually, we were able to find donors who would give us grant money to buy vehicles. Extraordinary. We replaced all of the outdated vehicles. We now have a fleet of 10 vehicles. One is a semi-tractor trailer. We have another semi-tractor trailer on order. All of our vehicles are current and up to date. And during COVID, we were able to extend to everybody the option for a second delivery. That enabled our pantry partners to maintain fresh produce, a supply of fresh produce, milk, eggs, butter, yogurt, where getting a delivery once a month, they quickly were depleted of those things and then had to wait again for another delivery a month later. And many of our partners, as I go out and visit, many of them commented that made a difference. That
Maintenance fees during that time
oh,
frame. So they had to go through the roof. That has to be the way you did it, right?
we added trucks, we added maintenance for those trucks, we added diesel, we added drivers, and today, with today's diesel prices, it costs $1,000 to fill up our semi tractor trailer rig. $1,000 of diesel. Extraordinary. But we are committed. We've been here for 40 years. Going to be here another 40. We are committed to continuing this level of service and finding new ways to improve our service. So delivery is really important. Our delivery men, they are our frontline customer service.
Yes.
The regional partnership coordinators and the delivery guys, the truck drivers, are out there problem solving on a regular basis. And it's not that they go dock to dock with pallets of food, but they're working with people at the agency to offload to make it as convenient as possible for them. So it's a different role here. When you're a truck driver at Food Bank of Iowa, you're also a customer service rep.
Oh, that's absolutely true. And I was being a little funny. I know that your costs have gone up, but you actually have not passed those costs down to your partners.
No.
And in fact, your maintenance fees are lower than they were, although your costs are substantially higher. And it's the kind of thing, again, knowing you probably don't go around talking about that to these network partners. But while I'm here, I want to make certain that they know that if they're thinking about all of the pressures, all of the increase in fuel costs, the increase, all of the supply chain issues, I want your partners to process that you are experiencing all of those things and you're still finding a way to deliver to them, every single one of them, that you're experiencing all of those things. And you're working really hard to not pass that cost down to them, but to absorb the cost and to find new ways to get money in order to do it. That in the middle of all of this, when you got USDA food, which had become a really, really vital part of the increases that we had. So we have, as a network, we're seeing we now, as of the last survey that we did of all of our members, we're seeing significant increases in demand now hitting across our whole network, right? So we're seeing more demand. So we're seeing more demand. We're seeing less U.S. commodities. So here you are, and oh, by the way, when you go buy the stuff, it costs more. What grade was I in again? 11th grade the last time that inflation was as high as it is. So with all of those pressures, as I said, I want to make sure I'm going to say the thing that maybe you feel uncomfortable saying, but I want to make sure that your network really thinks about all of the extraordinary ways that you are working hard to show up for them. And when I say you, Michelle, I mean you personally as a leader. And I also mean all of the members of that Food Bank of Iowa team. There are some members, and I do not begrudge them this. I don't. So I want to say it in a way that doesn't sound like my little niece says, sometimes my tone can be a little judgy. I'm not trying to be judgy. But there are some of our members who had the luxury or felt that they had the luxury, and sometimes they had significant health challenges of their own that caused them to not be able to come into the building, right? So we have members who didn't come into the building, who had, we have some CEOs who didn't go into the building for a period of time. We have some members who to this day still don't have all of the team back into the building. And I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like I'm saying there's something wrong with them for doing that. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, it takes a unique level of commitment to show up in that building every day, come what may. And I want to applaud Food Bank of Iowa for doing it. And I hope that you're proud of that. So the Food Bank of Iowa, I want you patting yourselves on the back too for the things that you've accomplished as a team and the ways that you partner with these extraordinary partners that you have. And at moments of crisis, I think about it in my role at Feeding America a lot, that before the pandemic, I knew in my heart that I was going to try my very best. I was going to give everything that I've got to being a great, great partner in this work with our members and with communities. I knew that I wanted to do that. And one of the silver linings with the dark, dark, dark clouds that came along with COVID is that I got a chance to show it. So it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to have it in your heart. It's another thing to have an opportunity to show it. And throughout the pandemic, our national office has had a chance to show it. And I hope that you can feel it, Michelle. I hope that your whole team at Food Bank of Iowa can feel it. And I hope that your other members of your network can feel it too. There are a lot of people across this country who have great respect and admiration for all of you and for what you do. And sometimes there's an agency partner out there in Iowa that somebody's complimenting me on, right? And they're like, and I'm like, hi, I'm Claire Babineaux-Fontenot. It's my privilege to serve as a CEO of Feeding America. So, oh, wait, aren't you affiliated with the pantry at my church? I'm like, well, yes, I am. I'll straighten my back up and kind of have my head up a little higher. Mom used to say, she's now passed. It's like 10th anniversary of her death will be this year. And one of the things that I keep hearing, I can hear it in my mother's voice, Michelle. I mentioned before I'm 58, so I'm still hearing it in my mother's voice. She probably would still call me a girl even today. But she'd say, you can tell a lot about a girl by the company she keeps. And I agree. I think my mom smiles down when she sees the company I'm keeping today. So are we going to ask questions, allow for questions from the audience at all, Michelle?
I don't think we can today, Claire, with the technology, if you'll grace us with your presence next year, we'll ask for questions ahead of time. So here's a little tease. We hope we'll have Claire next year. Claire, you just mentioned, my dad has a similar saying. He says, "You are who you hang out with."
Ooh, I like the way he says that too. That's great.
He's a very direct man. You are who you hang out with, and so choose who you hang out with carefully.
Mm.
And we only have so much time in the day, and we only have so much bandwidth. But I'm grateful that I get to hang out with you, Claire.
Oh.
And I'm grateful I get to hang out with other Feeding America food bankers. I'm grateful I get to hang out with the Food Bank of Iowa team of employees, several of whom the partners will hear from later today. And I'm really grateful to hang out with these partners that are frontline, that make it happen each and every day, without whom we wouldn't feed anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I visit food banks, I often will ask people, especially people in the warehouse, but I ask all, people in different roles. I'll say, "What do you tell people you do for a living?" And if they tell me something like, "I drive a forklift, or I pack boxes," I ask them, I said, "Hey, would you do me a favor? Tonight when you go home, would you talk to the person who inspires you to be your best self?" Whoever that is. And I will ask them who it is. And sometimes they say it's my little girl. Sometimes they say it's my mom, my grandma who raised me when my parents couldn't. I said, go have a conversation with that person. And tonight, if you don't mind, tell them this strangely tall lady who you can't tell virtually, but maybe when you see me, you'll be able to tell, with this really crazy French last name, that she asked you to tell them that what you do, because of what you do, that moms can rest at night because they know their babies have enough to eat. That elders in your community don't have to decide whether they're going to pay their light bill, get prescription drugs, or eat. That over the holidays, grandma doesn't have to come up with an excuse not to have the meal at her house, but instead she can host her family and she can show love the way she was taught love, through a meal. So that's what you do. That people who are about to go on a job interview and who need to show up well, that young students who are about to go take an admission test so they can be the first in their family to ever go to college, like I was, that they get to do that, aided by a nutritious meal, because that's what you do. That's actually what you do. And you do it in lots of ways. You do it from forklifts. You do it from behind trucks. You do it from behind desks sometimes. You do it in church pantries. You do it in lots of ways. But all of us are doing the same thing.
Claire, such an honor to walk alongside you on this journey. You could be anywhere else. This talented group of employees at the Food Bank of Iowa, all of them, the other 39 of us, could be anywhere else. And our pantry partners, they could be doing anything else, but we choose to be here together. And I feel so blessed to be part of this team of 30,000 people that come together to make sure Iowans in 55 counties have enough to eat. It's extraordinary.
Agree.
Claire, thank you so very much. I can only imagine what your calendar looks like on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that you would take time out today to join this passionate hunger fighting team, I'm grateful and I'm honored. And next year we will have questions for you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have a very exciting day yet ahead of us, and what a great way to start it with Claire Babineaux-Fontenot. Stay tuned for a short video, after which we'll go to break. And remember to come back for this morning for some really exciting sessions, and then again this afternoon. And remember, be present to win at the drawing this afternoon. Thank you.